Again, thanks everybody so much for joining us today. Uh, Nigel and I are going to be talking about LinkedIn and how to maximize your time on this platform, especially now since everybody is home. And this is a great time to make connections that honestly you're going to need on the way out of this. So Nigel, why don't you start and let everybody know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Been in this LinkedIn world probably I was on LinkedIn in 2007 and kind of got active in it pretty quickly, to be honest. But it wasn't until 2013 that I turned it into a full-time role. And I set up Value Exchange in 2014, and I've done it pretty much full-time ever since. There's a little summary of me there, so I don't need to read all that out, that's for sure. You'll probably see from my number of connections, I like to keep my sort of network fairly tight. I don't boast a number of connections. I believe in keeping a tight network around me, but we'll go into that more later. So yes, for train companies, mainly organizations, usually traveling a lot. That's obviously curtailed in these times, sadly. Hopefully get back to a new normal eventually. But my world is all about helping businesses understand how to get more out of LinkedIn and turn it into a lead generation tool to create the relationships, which ultimately will put money in the bank.
My story is a little different. I started on my journey on LinkedIn, and I think it was 2006, just as a regular person out there. And in 2000, I was working in advertising in advertising agencies and brands as a print buyer. And in 2008, I lost my job, and I actually met Nigel Cliff, who I had started a LinkedIn group called Print Production Professionals at the time, and there was a couple of thousand members in it. And and Nigel and another gentleman had started a website called Print Media Center, and they were looking for somebody who could bring some audience members and also create some content. And Nigel is actually the founder of Print Media Center. Eventually what happened is that I just became the face of it, and Nigel was going back and forth from England and America way too much. We didn't want him here anymore. So I was able to, take the business over, and since then declared myself the intergalactic ambassador to the Printiverse. Now, my LinkedIn networking and connection story is a little bit different than Nigel, as you can see by the numbers here. I do want to say that because I run this group and I sit as a connection hub of a lot of people, all of these, I would say 95% of my connections, 99% of the people, 100% of the people who choose to follow me are reaching out to do that. I am not actually going out and seeking connections. As a matter of fact, LinkedIn, I've got, 190 more before LinkedIn cuts me off. So every time I connect with 10 people, I kind of go back and try to find people to disconnect with, who aren't active or whose profile pictures have gone missing. I try to be, selective about who I disconnect with, because I feel my network is very important in the sense that it helps everybody else. As Nigel mentioned, I am so close to 100,000 group members. So if you're not a member of Print Production Professionals, please get in there. I want to celebrate 100,000. And again, I just by virtue of all of the people I'm connected to in marketing and advertising, in the printing industry, in that circle, I appear in a lot of searches. And a lot of times when people connect with me, they say the weirdest things like, I see your face everywhere, so I just thought we should connect because I seem like I'm the only person not connected with you. So it's a little odd. So we are now going to get into a presentation that is more of a conversation than anything else, starting with selling on LinkedIn and Nigel's advice.
Thanks, Deborah. Yeah, yeah. Don't is the first comment to make. Can I just add in there? You may this may be interesting to people. I actually set up a business in the States with Deborah, an LLC. Do you call it over there? Before we'd even met. So the power of LinkedIn is such that we formed this relationship of great depth. And we'd never actually met before we actually formed a business. I just think that's an amazing fact, and that's going back 10 years ago, I think, Deborah, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, actually, June is my 11th anniversary at Print Media Center.
Yeah, that's an interesting fact, isn't it? Yeah, one of the biggest failures that I find people make with their approach to LinkedIn is LinkedIn's a sales tool, isn't it? Aren't we all there to pitch at each other? Actually, the secret to success on LinkedIn is don't sell. The minute you turn on that selling button on LinkedIn, I think you've lost the plot. It's a place to it's a long-term game. It's a place to build trust in your personal brands, and to be sharing and giving of content in terms of what you can put back into this space, and wait for those connections to turn into opportunities that at the right pace for that person, you can begin to have that more selling kind of relationship. So certainly in the early part of a relationship, if anybody comes at you with that sort of selling arm, you just want to back them off. You just want to swipe them away. But we can all see it coming. We can usually see the type of profile where a person's going to come straight at us. If we accept the connection request, almost the minute we've done it, we're getting a follow-up message saying, "Can I sell you the 3 for 2 offer?" Oh, just a minute, hang on. This is the wrong pace, the wrong time. And I think actually you can do your personal brand more harm by going too quickly on that relationship curve than just by being a little bit more patient in the way that you build up that relationship with somebody. I use the expression, trust isn't built in a moment, trust is built over a long period of time. And the ultimate success of LinkedIn is being valuable to the people who are experiencing your giving of information and knowledge, and who at some point then will potentially approach you to take that journey further rather than you approach them. So it's kind of inverting the sales funnel, really. Instead of it being a push out, an outbound sales effort, I find LinkedIn is best used when it's an inbound reputational basis that you're building for your strategy. And if you do that correctly, honestly, people will come to you. It's a fantastic thing. I've been doing this some while now. You might imagine that it works for me too, of course. But people who stick at this and do it really well find that their funnel increases just by being giving of information, sharing other people's content as much as pushing out their own, just being a nice human being. And actually that leads to inbound opportunities.
So I see it a little differently, and I guess I should have mentioned this in the beginning. Nigel and I don't necessarily agree with the method, but we both agree that there's definitely a better way of doing it to maximize your results. And to me, everybody is always selling on LinkedIn as the subtext of everything that you're doing. If I want to sell myself as a connector, as the ambassador, then I have to act out on that, and I have to honor that, and I have to deliver on that. And so openly delivering on it lets other people know that this is something that I do. So technically I am selling, although I'm not saying connect with me so I can help you connect with somebody else, which would be the hard sell. Making comments on people's posts is a form of selling if you do it in a conversational way, which we're going to get to. But I think what Nigel was referring to more is really the hard sell. And I'm sure if you're, I'm not sure what everybody's segment is here, but we all have a place in our lives where we're customers and not just people who sell things. So from that perspective, my assumption is that everybody here has been approached by somebody at some point to buy something. And it's just how irrelevant was it, and how canned was that message that you just know that there's no meaning behind it. For example, I get connection requests all the time for people who want me to buy a server, like a computer server. And which is interesting, except I work from my home. And if they, had actually done any research, they would know that a computer server is the least thing I need, let alone a web press or something that you couldn't even load into my house. So that is really the bucket you never want to be in. But always you're selling yourself on LinkedIn from how you present yourself, from what you say, from who you connect with. And I think we're going to get into that. And there was a comment that there's a distinction between selling and building a brand. And I completely agree with that. And I think that's what Nigel and I are both saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff makes a really good point there. Yeah, this is building brand. This is building reputation in order to get to a point to deserve the conversation. And I think it's about the pace. There's a, you know, if in the first few minutes you're selling in that relationship, you've lost the plot. But there will inevitably come a point. Why are we all here? You know, so we're ultimately here to build our brand, to lead to opportunities that will lead to sales. So I'm not being naive in this, but I just think the journey is more subtle these days. You know, there's so much noise coming at us, and we've got to be able to differentiate that noise from genuine relationship building and value. And I just think, you know, just to reflect on how we try and pitch ourselves on LinkedIn is a really important factor. Otherwise, our reputational value is actually being more damaged than it is enhanced.
Yeah, I just want to add to something you just said, which is that timing is also really important. And right now, in this point of time in human existence, the last thing you want to do is try to sell anybody anything when they are trying to navigate their life, they're trying to navigate their homes, they're trying to navigate potentially reopening their business. Unless you have something that is completely pertinent to any of that and you have a relationship prior with this person, I wouldn't sell anything until the end of the year, quite frankly. Yeah. David Rickman made a comment. It's funny. He says they call it pitched slapped when someone asks you to connect, and then 5 minutes later you're getting bombarded by sales information. So that's hysterical. I'm definitely stealing that.
I've not heard that one before. That's great, David. Thank you.
I'm totally stealing pitch slapped.
I'm going to reuse that.
Oh yeah, it's done. TM. So defining your connection strategy. Nigel, why don't you take it from there and I'll comment.
Yeah, well, you're looking at two people who've got completely different perspectives on this, but we have different goals and ambitions. So let me explain. Right from the very beginning of me establishing my connections and my network on LinkedIn, I figured that I wanted to build around me people who, and I use this expression, could add value to my life, or I could add value to theirs. And if the answer to that question was yes, then I would be delighted to have you as a new friend. What I don't need is connections. My model of being a LinkedIn training consultant is not built around being a celebrity. No, I'm a celebrity. But I do enjoy, and I hugely value having a valued network around me. I mean, my number of connections, just in case you didn't see the slides, about 4,700, I think, which is relatively small. It's certainly compared to my peers in the world who do what I do. I'm kind of almost proud I've got amongst one of the smallest networks. Most of other people who do what I do have got, you know, tens of thousands or even 100,000 followers. A bit like yourself, Deborah. I couldn't do business with 100,000 people. You know, my model is about doing business with you know, corporate bodies, and therefore I couldn't frankly do business with every single one of my existing connections, let alone try to manage and mold and develop relationships with even double what I've got. So here's how I think about it. And if anybody's in the same position as me, ask yourself this question. If you're in a business-to-business environment, so you're not selling to consumer, you're selling to businesses, ask yourself, first of all, I'd say to people, you know, close your eyes. Just think of what a good customer looks like in your world. And then ask yourself, how many of those new customers do you need in the next 12 months to make your business and your personal circumstances really successful? And you know what? I ask that question often in a room, and the answer typically will come back, well, 1, 5, 10, 12, 6, 8. Do you know, it's rarely more than actually the strange figure of 12. I think that's kind of 1 a month. And if it's beyond that, it's probably because there's some consumer element of that that relationship you're building. So in the business to business environment, it only might take a handful of pieces of new business of a good customer type to make yourself really successful. So I say, well, what is the purpose then of spending all my time developing new connections instead of nurturing and adding some value to the connections I already have, or even better, seeking out the optimum connections who might be your future customers and really developing a tighter, closer, more meaningful relationship with those fewer connections. And I've had that sort of stance since the very beginning of all of this. And it seemed to be, certainly if I go back 3 years and prior, I seem to be against the grain. Oh, build connections, build your network. You never know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And I think, really? Is the likelihood of me ever having that scenario in my world ever likely to happen? And I just didn't figure it was going to be the case. So I've been really careful about adding people of value into my network. And honestly, I use the expression, I'm a product of the people I surround myself with, and that makes me very special. I'm a product of the people I surround myself with, and that makes, so I really do value that network hugely, and there's a number of colleagues on the line now that I've seen come in line, and you are my friends, and you are, in a sense, you are my life. I really do think this is an important feature. So, and another reason why I want to check connections coming in is because there are a lot of fake profiles on LinkedIn. I think the latest figure I heard is 690 million people on LinkedIn. I mean, goodness me, how many notes is that? I can't figure that out, but I can get a handle on 10,000, 100, but I can manage smaller numbers. I can have a relationship with a smaller number of people that means something to them and something to me. I cannot have a relationship in my world with 100,000 people. So my connection strategy is based around relevance, to me and to their world. And I might be missing opportunities, especially as a LinkedIn trader. There's a lot of people who need help out there. I could be cutting off people at the very source. But having said that, I'd rather spend my time nurturing and having good relationships with people that can add value to me and to my life, and hopefully reciprocally as well.
Okay, so this is going to be like the black and white version of this point, because my world is completely different than Nigel's world. I do have a relationship with the community that I've built around my group and around the website and around the mission, which is to bring Printspiration resources and information to print and marketing professionals. And I'm just one person, so I need help doing that. So I've cultivated a network of people who are poised to be able to help other people within the network. But I do lead that group. So I do have to serve the greater good of the group with information that is on the highest level and then trickles down. But within that giant group, I do have personal relationships with people who I've met through the group. And also my connection strategy, I don't just accept invitations from everybody who asks. As a matter of fact, these days I'm declining more because, like I said, I have a problem where I'm hitting the LinkedIn limit for connections, which is 30,000, by the way. No, arbitrary figure. Nobody knows where it's comes from, and they will not change it. At this point now, my connection strategy is to only accept the invitations from people I know can really be valuable to the other people in my network, because I don't buy anything in the sense that I would need to connect with somebody to try to understand. The other reason I do connect with people is to learn things. So that is a connection strategy as well. Somebody might be completely out of my network, but they're talking about artificial intelligence in regard to how it's going to start reading resumes and things like that. And I think that that's a topic that is important to the big collective, which is how I serve the big group, and then can still go in and serve individual members of that group if that happens to be what they're focusing on at that time. And that's the other thing. Even within my giant network, there are sub networks going on of people in individual vertical markets or segments of the industry. So as the hub, the connection point, I don't like to say leader, but technically I am the leader. Although I honestly think it's a collective more, because what do I know? I was a print buyer in advertising. I don't know a lot, but what I do know is that who to find to come back and serve the group. So my connection strategy is a little different in the sense that it applies to not how it necessarily can benefit me, but how it could benefit me in the sense of helping other people down the line.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think I couldn't agree more with the fact that it's not just about connecting with people who could be customers. A lot of people ask me, what's your strategy with regard to connecting to competition? Now, in my world, competition's a funny thing. It's not like we're selling a product, but one of the most powerful things that I enjoy on LinkedIn is being connected to people who do what I do. Because I can learn so much from those people, every day, sharing. LinkedIn is a strange beast. I have a love-hate relationship with LinkedIn. Who kind of probably doesn't? There's nothing better. There's nothing better than LinkedIn for what it does. But there's so many things it could do better. But one of the features is being able to sort of have perspectives that other people who do what I do that share, and actually. We're a kind of a community. Most people who are genuine and kind in this world form a part of a community. We're here to help each other. The world's a big place, and therefore I couldn't agree more that connecting with people, not just your customers, but your competition. But can I just add one factor to that? And this is in your settings, and I feel quite strongly about this. Most of you will know, I'm sure most of you on this call are mature LinkedIn users, but I have a belief that just because we become friends on LinkedIn doesn't mean that you can go rifle my connections, right? So I turn my visibility of my connections off to anybody outside of me. So the only connections you can see of mine are those to whom we are mutually connected. So because it's like, I'm an old guy. I built up a lifetimes of connections and value in suppliers, friends, relationships, prospects, customers. They're all in there. Why would I want to sort of make that the visibility of that address book open to the world? I just think that's ridiculous. Why should I display my inner workings to everybody? So given that I've locked those connections down, I'm happy to connect to anybody in that sense, because you can't get into the me through that device. And especially with the increasing issue of cybercrime in our worlds, and the fact that LinkedIn is an easy vehicle to corrupt through setting up a fake profile. It's just so easy to do that if you're not really careful about who you accept a connection from, and you don't really vet all those incoming connections carefully, you probably have fake profiles already connected to you who are probably already rifling all your connections and your details. I just figure, you know what, I'm going to be a little bit more careful about my life's work than that. And the other issue on that is I respect my connections to the extent that I don't want them used by unscrupulous people in the network. So I'm kind of protecting those body of connections by having that attitude. I'm not sure what your thought is on that. Do you lock yours down, Deborah?
Everything I do is completely open out there. The one thing I do have set up for myself, however, is that I have a Gmail address I use for LinkedIn. I don't really move people off of one Gmail that I can deal with the spam and everything else that comes there. I don't allow them into my print media center world unless there's a real kind of business relationship or an opportunity to help other people or work together in some capacity. So I keep it segmented, but everything I do, every social channel I'm on is open for connection. Now, that doesn't mean I accept every connection request I get. And I certainly do vet the people who ask me to connect. And the one thing I look at is the content that they're sharing, which is available on their profile, because immediately you can tell if they're a spammer or not, or because they're just putting out stuff about blockchain and Bitcoin and you know, just you could just tell that they're just putting links out in the world. And that's why I'm not really sure why they want to connect to me. But certainly they try to get in my group, and I don't let them in there either for those purposes. But Nigel, it's 10:30, so let's move it along a little so we make sure we get into the content here. So, which is the point of the next slide, creating good content. So why don't you creating great content? Why don't you kick this off?
Well, you know, at the top level of a strategy around LinkedIn, there are two things you need to do, only two things. One is have a great profile, and we're not going to go into that today, but it's pretty obvious, isn't it? If we haven't got a super profile that is is sort of putting our brand on its best foot forward at the first view, then, you know, we're nuts not to have a profile that does us proud. I often ask a room full of people, are you proud of your profile? And ridiculously, on average, 95% of the people sit down if I say remain standing if you're proud of your profile. Anyway, so having a great profile is number one. Number two is about engaging. Two things to on LinkedIn: profile and engaging, and that's it. Now, the depth of the engaging piece is rich and deep, and it's all about content, and it's about engaging with good and valuable content. Now, my own take on this is I don't publish 3, 4, 5 posts a day. I sometimes don't even do more than one post a week. And that may come as a surprise to people who think, well, you're on LinkedIn, you're one post a week. Because what I want to do is I want to put value into my network of something that inspires them to think more deeply about something, or a piece of advice that they may have not considered. And therefore, if that content is good, it will resonate and have a greater audience around it than me just pushing noise continually into a network. You know, we're all receiving so much, you know, through all the different media channels, and I think our brains are becoming extremely good at just filtering all that stuff out. And therefore, how do we make our stuff sticky? You know, how does something stick there and have an impact on somebody beyond all that other noise that's coming at them? And I think it's about quality of content. So I can't speak highly enough for trying to raise the bar on quality in terms of that content piece. And rather than publish, you know, 10 pieces a week, let's produce something really, really meaningful that can add value to somebody's life. And I think that will have more legs than it will just pumping out the stuff because that's what we think the algorithms like. I really don't think that. So, you know, good content's not good enough. Having great content is the key. And you can't have a conversation like this without saying the power of video is enormous. You know, for the last couple of years, it's really quite the case that if you can have the confidence to take that content piece to video, then you will get an audience that's ready to listen to you. It's just a thing. It's just become a thing. Now that might die in time, but I somehow don't think so. I think we're just engaged by moving imagery and by seeing the personality of somebody through video. You know, any amount of me trying to explain this in a text or in a post with just an image without me moving in the camera will simply not have the same value as it will by being able to express this with all the body language that comes for it and everything else. So if you're not already incorporating video in your content stream, I'd advise you to get on that curve. You know, don't wait. Just move that journey along, because you will be doing it in the end. You know, a few years ago, we wouldn't have been doing all the things that we're doing now with the smartphone, and, you know, apps rule my life. If you said to me 10 years ago, apps will rule my life, I said, that's ridiculous. You know, of course I can avoid that. We're not going to avoid it. In time to come, we'll all be doing video with everybody. And of course, these last few days and weeks have brought forward that you know, need to get onto Zoom, and look how easy it's been. Look how many people are saying, oh, this wasn't as much of a problem as I thought it was going to be. And who knows, we might just have had a world shift in terms of communications as a consequence of what we've been through the last month. And I do hope we will, because, hopefully we'll have less emissions and all that sort of stuff going on. But so getting back to content, produce valuable content. And the source of that, I'll just throw in, is what are the questions that your customers ask you most often? If you're not sure what's published tomorrow, 9 o'clock, Nigel said we should do good content. What do we do? Well, revert back to the kind of questions that your customers are always asking you about your worlds, about your topics of interest, and almost play them back as answers. Do you know what? I've been asked 3 times this week what this means, or what my thoughts are about this topic. So if you kind of have this sort of like little content repository going in your head, and you find that people are asking you the same questions, one of the most powerful pieces of content you can produce is just playing back to an audience repeatedly the topic of the questions they're continually asking. And they're not always the cleverest of things either. I have to say that they're sometimes, we're bringing life back to basics. Not everybody knows what I do if I'm on LinkedIn, know what I expect them to. So I don't go too clever on that stuff. I keep it quite simple, at a level where most people get some value from moving their journey that next step on. So that sense of giving of value and content, I think, is such a really useful piece to understand as a part of a successful strategy on LinkedIn.
Okay, so Nigel and I really differ on our strategies here. First of all, I don't believe that quantity has anything to do with quality. If you're putting out valuable shares for your network, and the most valuable shares, by the way, are shares that people you are connected with want to share with their connections, not necessarily what is about you, but what is about them. As well, the actual share is content. And I think that is really important to address, because creating a good share is what you are presenting. The content is the content, but I do have a formula for it, which is value proposition. Information, value proposition, link. So what is it about? Why is this important to the person or the people or the group of people that I want to attract to this content, that I want to read this content, that I want to try to have conversations and thought leadership with, and then of course the link, so that they click over and they read it. There's also, depending upon how large your network is, you are competing with a feed. And a feed is a good thing. If you have a very small network, whatever that might be, 100 people, 1,000 people, that's relatively small network on LinkedIn, but it's completely manageable. In that sense, being connected to me, it might seem like noise, because I will post 3, 4, 5 times a day. Some of it is automated through tools, content from my website, which I would argue is great content, no matter how many times a day I send it out. I am playing different odds. When I don't send out at least 3 posts, 4 posts a week, I can see a significant dip of traffic coming to my website. So I have to keep feeding the content beast for it to get seen. But I really think that it is important to focus on the actual share itself as its content. If you just say, click here and put a link, it's not very compelling to people. It also doesn't say anything about you. It doesn't say anything about what you want or hope people get out of it, which also says something about you. And I think how you share is extremely, extremely important and should be considered content. Nigel, what do you think about the share as content itself?
Well, there's a couple of issues inside there. The first thing to hit that nail on the head about share, not to be misinterpreted here, when we talk about generically about sharing content on LinkedIn, we're using the word in its larger format. The actual share feature on LinkedIn, just to differentiate in people's minds what we're talking about here, is is a strange thing. Likes and comments on posts, for example, is a really good thing. A share, it doesn't really add any value to the network. So just to differentiate that particular issue in people's minds.
Wait, I don't understand. You're saying if somebody shares my share, that has no value to the network? It has value to me. They pass it along to their network. I might get like 6 more people who didn't know Print Media Center existed could click on it, read an article and say, oh, I want to subscribe to the newsletter. I want to listen to a podcast.
We could be in danger of going down a little rabbit hole here, but let me explain it because it is important. If you share technically a piece of content from somebody on LinkedIn, you're moving that topic away from the source from where it originated. And you're kind of taking it. It's like the analogy I make is this. So I'm meeting my mates at the bar. I wish, and I'm 5 minutes late. They're already chatting, and I walk up, and they're having a really fantastic conversation. I think this was a brilliant conversation. I'm gonna go to this different part of the bar. I'm gonna start telling these other people what a fantastic conversation this is. I'll leave the party. There's nobody at the end of the bar having that conversation. And what's the point in moving it? The value of the conversations is where it started, not to move it somewhere else. So algorithmically,
why can't you have it in both places? I have the conversation. If somebody shares something of mine, I go on their post and I thank them for sharing it. I hear what you're saying. It's diluting it, but I just do not agree with not engaging with people who share your content.
I just, if you go and look at the engagement you get with the actual share that somebody takes the trouble to do, I too always go in and thank them because it's just a courteous thing to do.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing my content. Really appreciate that. Have a great day. But if I go back to that shared content a week later to see actually what engagement it got, it's zero. All right, it's almost always zero. So I would rather spend my time adding value to the place where the original content started, where there's a debate, the conversation is going on, and put my time into that as a method of paying tribute to the originator of the content and continue the conversation there, because we'll all get greater benefit from it in the place it started than multiply sharing it into other areas where the conversation dies algorithmically.
Okay, I don't disagree with you, but I just want to present it a different way, right? I come out with a new product, right? Yes, the first people in that first inner concentric circle are going to be the people I can have direct conversations with. But if they get shared out and shared out and shared out, I can start creating a community around that topic. I can start looking, I'm just saying we use LinkedIn for different purposes. Nigel.
Yeah. I would argue though that the algorithms pick up the sense of interaction with a piece of content that has engagement. So if a piece of content, and there's a time issue with this as well, if a piece of content within the first hour, couple of hours, half a day, has interaction by virtue of viewers, commenters, likers, LinkedIn's algorithms will serve that to an increasing number of people virally very quickly. So actually, the more push you give the original content, the greater the reach of the original article. If you take that to multiple shared environments that are not stimulated by any activity, they will die. They'll just die on the vine. And we do have different worlds. We're serving different audiences. So this really does depend on, the overarching thing here is what's your strategy? What market you're trying to reach with what intelligence, with what messages, and in your market trying to reach big audiences, that could be very well a strategy for you. But I would suggest to anybody in my position who's got more of a niche offer, trying to build brand and influence on your personal brand, then the sharing feature doesn't have the same benefits as it might in your environment. So I think everybody who's listening to this podcast has got to say, well, which end of the spectrum am I? What audience am I trying to build? and then just be sure of a strategy. And, you know, if anybody's unsure and wants to share any difference of experiences with us, then fabulous, because that's how we learn. You know, we learn something every day. Every day is a school day and all that. So it's just that I spend my life on this platform studying and watching what's going on and sharing it with other people, you know, equally, if not cleverer than I. And I've just got to the opinion where that is not the best option for somebody in my position trying to build a personal brand.
Right.
But I'm not a massive audience. So
Right. I mean, we are talking about maximizing results. So there's my thing is my sharing outside of, or having people share outside, to me just means that there's an ability to take the information I'm putting out there and to a broader area that I might not have been able to reach or connected with. So it takes it out of my immediate space and perhaps gets more people and brings them into the collective. So Nigel, let's move on to the power of storytelling. Also, Jeff is making comments about the algorithm on in the chat box that people can look at too, gives a little more in-depth thing about how that works. And unfortunately, we are battling a algorithm as well as trying to put good content out there. So there is a strategy around dealing and understanding that algorithm, but let's not get any more into that right now. Let's move on to the power of storytelling.
Yeah. Interestingly, that's almost, storytelling is almost based around an algorithm as well. Let me explain. I've studied content for a long time. Even in pre-digital days, I was kind of involved in content, and it just increasingly occurs to me, and we have evidence of the fact that where you can contextualize content around a story, particularly if it's a personal story, it has just increasing resonance with an audience. And whenever I'm talking about content, I cannot leave out the concept of storytelling in an effort to explain to people how this really works. Facts, we don't resonate, human beings don't resonate with facts and figures. But we do resonate with stories. You know, luckily, if we were brought up, being told nursery rhymes from the age of 6 months, whatever it was, that storification of information is what sticks with us, and therefore it's so vitally important to try and storify that content. A funny thing happened to me the other day. Now, I know we wouldn't start a post like that, although occasionally we might, but just being able to sort of put things in a story of the relevance to me as an individual has such a powerful effect. And bringing back the word algorithms, which unfortunately we cannot avoid in this digital world, Google, LinkedIn, the search engines like storification too, because if all we do is put up facts and figures, in terms of our purchase or our interest in any topic whatsoever, then it will be pretty easy to get to the top of a search engine by just listing more facts and figures. What I noticed is that the things that come to the surface on all our searches now are wrapped in a bigger story, a bigger context, the semantic nature of the answer which a search actually is delivered is sought and sought by Google's algorithms, for example, to not just give us the answer, but contextualizing the answer when a search comes back. So not going to get too technical, but the bottom line is if you could storify and turn into something by way of example, a testimonial, a case study, those are the kind of the old-fashioned words, but they're still highly relevant. Then the storification of content is such an important feature if you can wrap your content around in that way. Does that help explain that?
Where are they telling the story? In an actual post? Are they sharing a post with a story? Where is the story being told?
Inside the content. It's inside the post.
So if it's inside the post, how does the share of that story come into play? If it's not out in the LinkedIn ecosphere.
Well, the story has two impacts. It has the impact on the people reading it. It resonates more with individuals and human beings. So if I said to you, for example, you attend and host lots of events and conferences. I'm attending. I'm going to Chicago, Chris, and we're going to be doing this presentation on this day at that time. I'll see you there. Okay, thanks very much. Boring.
But that's a share.
Yeah, but if you contextualize, last year I had such an incredible
But you're
time.
talking about a share, not what you're sharing. You're talking about the way that you're sharing information.
Well, the way that we share it is typically through a post or
Okay,
through an article.
but that's what I'm trying to get at. There are two factors to this. There's the story in the actual content that you don't want to just give facts and figures. You want to contextualize it. But if you just share it, like, here's a great story, that's not the power of storytelling in that share. Like, I'm just saying, like, I don't see how there's not a correlation between how you share the story and the story itself.
Well, I'm trying not to get back to that argument over sharing as a concept. I'm just talking about as a basis for writing and posting valuable content to an audience that's receptive of it. If you can storify that content, then it will have a greater resonance with the audience, but also with the algorithms. Yeah, Google and LinkedIn are looking for the contextual understanding of how your product or service manifests itself in a benefit to an audience. And cleverly, the algorithms now pick up that as part of the intelligent way in which they serve us content when we're seeking information.
I mean, it makes total sense to me. I just think that that there is a distinct point to me being made back on how it's shared. If I could have a great story to tell everybody, a perfect blog. Google's happy because I've written a story, so it's going to send more people as a search result to it, whatever that might be. But then I go to LinkedIn and I just here's my latest blog post. There's no story behind that. Instead,
no, I would never do that. I'd never share a link.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. Like, when this is the point I want to make. You also have to put some storytelling into sharing your story. Here is a post about something incredible that happened to me last week. Has this ever happened to anyone else out there? That is going to get more. I mean, I'm not saying in a clickbaity type of way, but in a way that you're telling some part of the story in order to get people to read the other part of the story. It's not about just creating a great piece of content and throwing it out there and assuming that LinkedIn's going to like what's in. You're not making the distinction. You're basically saying, if I write a story and post it on LinkedIn, regardless of how I share it, LinkedIn's going to like it better because it understands that it's a story on my website. Is that what you're saying?
Up to the last few words you said there, absolutely. Because it's valuable to humans.
Yeah, I know it's valuable to humans.
So when humans first of all interact with it, because they have a resonance with that story.
Only if the share compels them to react, to click into the story. That's all I'm saying. Let's not keep arguing about it. I think we're both saying the same thing.
That's the art of how we craft the content going onto LinkedIn in the first place.
Correct.
To attract the attention to the reader.
Right.
There's an art to that too, but we haven't got the depth of time to go through that right now.
Right. And there's actually some really great comments about, using hashtags help define the story or the things that you want people to know about stories being shared and in the comments. Sorry. So
yeah, super stuff going on in the comments, everybody.
Yeah.
In answer to Perrin's great question, is it better to turn your website blog into an article? I actually do it the reverse way around, Perrin. I first perform the article or the content through LinkedIn as a post, making it suitable for the LinkedIn audience and the LinkedIn algorithms. And then if I feel that content is relevant for my website as an additional piece of content, I repurpose it on my blog on my website. But there I go to some additional trouble to add SEO value to it on my website to optimize it for that place too. So I get two bangs for my buck. So there's my original thought, my original content piece, comes out as a LinkedIn post. Then my methodology is the reverse of most people's. I then recraft that to put as a legacy piece on my website. So my website is constantly evolving, and Google's bots are constantly monitoring the activity of new content going on there as well. But in terms of time and effort, I've got double the bangs for my buck, and I've got
I do what Perrin does. I turn my website blogs into not articles, but into shares on LinkedIn. Nigel, we need to move it
yeah,
along.
sure.
So
Can I just there's only one critical factor on there, Deborah. I've got to add this in. Don't embed the link to your blog post inside your LinkedIn post. So because LinkedIn penalizes any content that has an embedded link within it. So if you're going to want to link people out to your website blog version of something, then you must produce the post without the embedded link, then going immediately back in and edit it and add in the link afterwards as an edit. That way that you're not penalized by LinkedIn at the very source of your content. That's a really important but vital feature to understand.
Okay, Phil has a question about video length, but we'll get to that as we're coming on, and then there's another one about hashtags and stuff like that. But let's just move to the end, and we'll get to these questions. How personal is too personal, Nigel? And I just want you to be mindful of the time, please.
Yeah, really good question. Most of us are on LinkedIn to achieve business objectives. Understood, but you cannot fail to notice the increasing personalization of content, and I think particularly in the world as it now is, and reflected almost in the last few months alone, how much more kind, aware of other people we've all become, and in that sense, the ability to be a little bit vulnerable in terms of a personality on LinkedIn, I think has got a real value. Not that I want to share all my woes and challenges, and this is not Facebook, but at the same time, having that sort of sense of personality, and therefore I call it vulnerability to a degree. Like, not everybody's lives are perfect. We're not in Instagram pouting pictures, aren't I beautiful? We're all real people, and I just think human beings resonate with other real human beings, and therefore having a degree of personality and being personal on LinkedIn is becoming an ever important factor, I find, increasingly so.
My opinion on it is that the person I interact with on LinkedIn should be the person that I meet with when I see them out in the real world.
Absolutely.
And if those things don't match, all of this, who am I supposed to believe? And most of the time, I'm going to believe the person in front of me, which doesn't always deliver to the person online. I think that, Ken agrees with my authenticity. And that's actually the perfect word to use for it, is be authentic. And people can really see through you trying to be something for them. By the way, there's a lot of people out there who, it makes me insane. Like if you see things like guru, or I'm a guru, I'm a this, I'm a that. They're telling you who they are in a way that you're supposed to, or already hold them in some regard, and they don't always live up to that. So as far as your own life goes, just be you. I mean,
Absolutely.
LinkedIn is a professional network. Be professional, and be that same exact person when they see you in the street. So bye, Chris Price. This presentation is called Maximizing Your Results. And up until this point, everything that Nigel mentioned, and there are some questions which we're going to get to, but I just want to go through these last two slides very quickly, and then we'll go back to it. Something that is definitely more of a time suck, but I see a gigantic value in it. Nigel doesn't necessarily, is the group opportunity. To me, a group is, and I don't mean start your own group. especially don't start one for your company, because honestly, nobody cares about that. Unless you're Adobe, then people care about that. But if you look at the group, the way I see it is that you have all of your connections, but in a group, you don't have to be connected with everybody in order to interact with them, in order to basically find people you might want to connect with based upon what they're sharing. And through interacting in groups, through putting discussion points out there, and I don't mean and I mean discussion topics, not selling things. Part of the problem with groups is that they are not really managed tightly, and they go off the rails very quickly with just people posting spam in there. But there are groups that are very tightly managed, like mine, Print Production Professionals. There is a zero tolerance for solicitations in that group. Some I do let stay posted. I leave it that I am the person who gets to make that decision, because I believe that there is a greater good opportunity, a new segment of the industry coming out that I think people should know about, or I want them to know about, or I want to at least present the opportunity for them to make that decision. So it does take more time. You have to really nurture. There used to be way better notifications from LinkedIn about groups that enabled you to better engage with people posting and understanding when people are posting. So this is kind of like a whole secondary level of engaging on LinkedIn. So if you think about everything that we've talked about prior as stage one, this would be stage two. Now that you've got your connection strategy, you've connected with the right people, you know your topics, you've been creating your stories, you've been creating great shares and having engagement. Now you can kind of take that show on the road into groups and start interacting and connecting with people that are relevant to you. And there's two strategies for that, in my opinion. There's one, which is to go into the groups that are talking about your subject matter, so you can learn more, so you can network with people, even your competition, as Nigel said, if you so want to. And then there's the other strategy, which is to join groups of people you want to influence or educate or sell to. For example, if I make direct mail equipment, I'm going to want to join a group of direct mail mailers because they're going, or printers, because they might need my equipment. If I want to talk about the opportunity of direct mail in the marketing mix, I'm preaching to the choir in that direct mail group. I want to join a marketing group, a branding group, an advertising group, and then share relevant, topical, quality stories in there about how mail made a difference in a brand's life, in a company's life, in a person's life, in some manner. So it is a longer tail, more time, but obviously for me, it was the thing that enabled me to literally create a business for the last 10 years. But it happened by accident, and I just went with it and cultivated it, and kept control of it. Had I not, there could be 300,000 people in there right now, but it would not be useful for anybody, including myself. So Nigel, did you want to add anything to that?
No, just the perspective that unfortunately LinkedIn took away some of the controls that meant it was easy for group managers to manage the content inside a group. And you've got a highly respected group that's built up over a long period of time. You manage it, extremely well. Unfortunately, people who set up a group are not in the position of having the time to manage those groups correctly. They're spammed by people just selling and selling and selling, and therefore eventually, people leave the group or don't interact with the group because the quality of the conversation and the value diminishes to a point of them not finding it of value. So it's LinkedIn ought to pay group managers, because they're providing the engagement on the platform. They're bringing visitors to the platform of LinkedIn, and it's a massive time sink. I can't imagine how much time you spend, Deborah, managing that group. And
a lot.
But as a general rule, many groups fall foul of the lack of that quality management.
Yes, but I mean, nobody's putting a gun to anyone's head. You can leave a group, you know,
Absolutely.
go, on people you're connected to, you could see what groups they're in. If there are people that you really respect, see what groups they're in, and check those out. We only have one more slide, and I know it's after the hour, and we do have some questions. So this one's more of a little bit of a tease. You should just write down that link that I have included on the slide, or take a screenshot or something. This is a very interesting little tool that LinkedIn has, which basically measures your activity with, is it four different categories? Yeah, Nigel, it's 4 or 5?
Yeah, four categories. Yeah.
4 different categories. They rate you every week on what your social selling index is. Now, ignore the word sell in this case, because neither Nigel and I are proponents of using LinkedIn to sell stuff, although it's the subtext that you're always selling yourself. And obviously you're not going to waste time on talking about other people's products. Why would you? But this thing is a good indication of how how successful you might be. Now, it is tied into LinkedIn selling a sales navigator tool. But the truth of the matter is that looking at what your number is today, someone like Nigel can help you assess how to make improvements and get that index up. Did you want to say anything else before we take questions?
Yeah, no, it's just a really simple thing to do. If you've got your browser open, people, just type that in, and it will give you a number out of 100, and it will break it down into 4 areas, of equal proportion, shall we say, 25 marks each. Establish your professional brand, finding the right people, engaging with insights, and building relationships. So my score will typically be between 82 and 89 at any point in time. I guess you'd expect mine to be fairly high out of 100. I've never had it over 89. I've never reached that 90 mark, which is kind of annoying. And today I think it's 84. But the point of it is...
wait, hold on. It's LinkedIn.com. Sorry, Sebastian, you're right. LinkedIn.com / isn't it sales?
Oh yeah, linkedin.com/sales/SSI.
Sorry, Sebastian. Thanks for pointing that out. Takes a German to tell me my links are wrong.
Yeah. But listen, the point, the ultimate success on LinkedIn is not about reaching a score. It's about, is it helping you achieve the goals you set out for LinkedIn to help you achieve? All right, that's the bottom line. Is it winning your business? That is. But on that journey, you might be encouraged by knowing that you've got an improving score. If today, for example, has incentivized you to want to go and take this journey, more seriously with the potential that it provides, then if your score's 29 today, what could it be in a couple of months' time? So it's the improvement and the rate of improvement I'm interested in, as opposed to the score itself.
I'm a 76, or between 76 and 85 or something. This week I'm a 76. Not really sure why, but Nigel, I don't like that Nigel has a higher score than me. It makes me crazy. I don't like it at all. I like to win everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've only got 5,000 connections, man.
All right. Well, I have control of this webinar, so I can mute you, just so you know. Okay. So we actually do have some great questions. I know it's after the hour. I really appreciate everybody staying. So just going back, first question was about what you said about not embedding a link in a share. Now, Nigel, when you explain, let me explain this. Don't create a share that has a link in it before you push post. That's what Nigel means by that. Nigel is saying to post the entire content without the link back to your website, without the link to the New York Times article, without the link anywhere off of LinkedIn. Post that post, your story, your content, whatever your share is. Then the first thing you do after that post is posted, LinkedIn tells you it's up and it's posted, you want to view it, you say yes, you yourself go into the first comment and put the link to whatever it is that you are sharing. Is that correct, Link?
That's
Nigel?
one option, Deborah. Or the other option is on the post at the top right, there's the three dots, the ellipsis. Click on the ellipsis and go to edit post, and then add the link, the bit.ly link or whatever it is, into the body text of the post. And it's just a workaround. I mean, it's ridiculous that we have to do this, but you can imagine LinkedIn's strategies to have you on their site. And the minute you put an external link to take them to anywhere, be it reputable or just to your own blog or your own website, it doesn't want to be taking people off the site. So it actually suppresses the value of that post at its very creation. So what's the way around that is, if you still want to take the journey of that customer to that website, then post edit the link, add the link after you've posted it, and do it immediately, do it straight away. Then you've got around that suppression.
Okay, so another question was about how many hashtags should be in a share. And there's something about third-party plugins, but I'm not really sure I'm understanding that. Ken, if you mean like using a tool like Hootsuite to program shares, I use Meet Edgar, so I do automate some shares, and I also post some shares. My personal opinion on the hashtags is, as long as they're out of the way of the content and the bottom, that to frame, again, I'm in a different story. I'm going for the most reach as possible to break out of my network of people. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep preaching to the choir over and over again. So I use as many relevant hashtags as LinkedIn is saying is relevant. And that is also interesting, because when you start typing a hashtag, you can put one in, Deborah is on LinkedIn today, but no one else is using it. There's really no point unless you're trying to start a movement. Otherwise, when you start typing in LinkedIn or LI, a bunch of suggestions will come up from hashtags that are currently being used. You can also research the ones that are most active, that have the most followers, that have the most people engaging with them, and plan a strategy around engaging that way. Do you have a thought on hashtags, Nigel?
Yeah, I'm slightly at odds with your take on that, for this reason, that it was only about 6 months ago that LinkedIn actually said that because people were beginning to operate on LinkedIn like they were on Instagram, adding hashtag after hashtag, it became sort of like hashtag spam world. So LinkedIn actually said that the optimum number of hashtags on a post is 3. And therefore,
they say that on every social platform, by the way. The default answer is 3 hashtags for the question.
On LinkedIn, sure. And where so taking the argument about hashtags that are popular, yes, there's an argument you might get a greater reach, but on the other hand, think of this as a perspective. If you've got a narrower niche audience for your product or service, then to be a more relevance on a smaller hashtag in a smaller audience is of greater benefit than being lost in a sea of hashtag marketing.
Yeah.
So you can play, I can play that both ways.
I agree. It could go both ways. I can tell you this, on the shares that are very important to me, I rarely put a hashtag.
Yeah, so
I'm not trying to reach a bunch of people.
Yeah.
I only want to speak to my people.
Yeah, I've done exactly.
I don't need hashtags. I'm not trying to get it beyond myself. Yeah. Hashtags are trying to get it beyond yourself and just see what strategy works for you.
Yeah, I'd agree. There's been occasions where I've not used them as well, for that exact reason. It's like I don't want to be seen as I'm gaming a system.
Exactly. I'm not trying to market something. I'm trying to really make a point, or I'm talking about something I feel is serious, and for whatever reason, although I'm not really that serious all the time.
Yeah.
So Jude actually made a really great, did you want to say something else about that?
Yeah, I just saying there was a question about automation tools for calendar posting your content. I just have to throw in here that it's the common belief amongst people like me who are nerdy behind the scenes on this, that actually LinkedIn can now have some form of knowing that it's come through an automated tool set, and therefore we're beginning to believe that actually even content coming through the likes of Hootsuite, etc., is actually also beginning to be suppressed. So if you're automating your content in that way and you have a lot of it, versus you're not automating, you're putting it out native and live, that there's evidence to suggest that automation is beginning to be suppressed. So I just throw that out there. I prefer to push my content out when I'm ready to interact with it. So if I post a video that I think is going to have some engagement, I want to be ready to have the engagement with it, not have it just predetermined at a point in time when I'm busy.
No,
the best thing in the world is not engaging with your own content.
That's a great point. And I do automate content only because I'm in a different, situation. But when I sign on LinkedIn, the first thing I do is I go into my own activity stream and I go back and I'll tag anybody in my content that I couldn't. You can't really, you can't tag anybody through automated tools. So I go back in and I retag, I reframe, maybe I'll reframe, maybe I'll edit, maybe I'll add a comment to it. I'll engage with my own content if it's, and you're right, if it's really important, I post it when I know I'm at my computer and I can deal with people and engage with people who might be engaging with me. Just very quickly, again, I want to be mindful of the time here. Phil asked about companies joining groups. I do not allow any companies to join my group. There is literally, it says I send an automated reply that says you have been denied because you are either a company or I can't make a determination on who you are based upon your platform at all, which is a nice way of saying I think you're a spammer. Nigel, while I'm scrolling through the questions, and again, if just, be mindful of people's time, although we do appreciate everyone's still here. This was actually another a good point that Jude made, which is that everybody is not on LinkedIn for the same reason. There's some people who are looking for jobs. There are other people who are looking to create more connections. And then there are more people who are really out there to push their needle for the business, whether it's, getting their products and services out there, for creating reach and awareness around it, or creating an audience for their conversations they want to have about their business and products and services. So I'll throw this out to you and then I'll come back and answer. What has worked and what has not worked for you as far as trying to really maximize and grow your network? I think you kind of established you don't really do that, but when you are in growth mode, how do you manage that?
Just by continuously publishing valuable content. Good content leads to conversations leads to business. So the more active I am on LinkedIn, the greater my number of profile views becomes. I can pick up those profile views either from people I know, first degree connections, or people that are new into my network, and just simply being prepared and ready to open up the dialogue with a conversation leads to opportunities down the line. And positioning yourself, I know this is an overused phrase these days, but nonetheless, that we have no other phrase for it, thought leader. To be thought of as a thought leader in your sector, somebody at the edge of what's happening is where I want to be. I want to be thought of, and therefore, I'm never going to call myself a thought leader. That would be arrogant. But the journey to
I call myself a thought leader, so I don't think I'm arrogant. Just saying.
Yeah, no, that's that British thing. It's the journey to giving. Being a thought leader is the point. It's the journey to, not the end of. And I think if we're seen as that in our industry, then people will look up to us and will want to deal with us and want to have a relationship with us, I believe. And it happens. That is a fundamental part of the strategy I train and consult on. And Deborah, it works.
Yeah, of course it works. You've been very successful at your business. I am definitely an exception. I am definitely, I think I'm even in your presentation, I think you present about me being an anomaly in regard to this. But along those lines, I kind of feel the same way about guru. Calling yourself an expert on something, I think is pretty pretentious. It is an American versus Brit thing as far as promoting yourself, but I definitely do not ever let anyone call me an influencer, although technically I am an influencer, because I worked in advertising for so many years that I know that right now, oh, let's work with an influencer. Let's work with an influencer. And then 2 years from now, or actually not even 2 years from now, right now, influencers have zero impact on the world. Nobody's buying products and services. Nobody wants to see people living glamorous lives when they're in their house with 6 kids who are screaming and they're eating SpaghettiOs every night for dinner. So I don't allow, I prefer thought leader because that gives me shelf life past the influencer fad. So I don't buy into it. And I also do think that I've earned the right to call myself a thought leader because, in the humblest way I say this, I do have influence over a large group of people in the sense that I can bring new ideas to them, in the sense that I can potentially help them see something a different way or understand something in a deeper way. And it's not always me who's doing that explanation or that explaining. It's people I know, but that I've got there. I know those people because I've spoken at events and I've spoken, at meetings, and I've done these types of things. So, thought leader is not a bad word in my world, but I understand what you mean. You really have to live up to that. It has to be something you aspire to. And honestly, it's my job, so it's a weird thing. But I did take a little offense to that, Nigel. So
No, you're right.
it's
It's the journey of aspiring to that is the important thing.
Yeah.
I aspire to be, but I would never call myself. But we're again. Listen, it's about strategy.
Yeah.
We have got different end goals, and therefore, but we're equally passionate about our end goals and our strategy to achieve them. That's the point. If there's anything anybody can take away from this webinar, it's I need to walk away with a very clear strategy of what I want to achieve. And if you've done that, fantastic.
There's still some questions coming in. At this point now, if everyone, we can just have a conversation. Feel free to unmute yourself. Mark, you want to ask your question live, or you want me to read it for you?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So Nigel, your workaround for getting a link into a post, which I've always struggled with because I want to call to action. I want to send to a website that's got Marketo on it so I can capture them, which may be mercenary, but that's the case. So I post something without a link. It's got no picture, it's nothing, just text. Then I go back and add the link. When I add the link, do I get the preview of the website's main pic and a little bit of text underneath? Does it work like that?
No, it doesn't.
Not in a comment.
No, not in a comment.
No, but in the main body, if I go into edit and edit my post, do I still get that?
No, you don't. You don't. So what I would do to get around that is I'd actually. It's hard to do in a webinar like this without sharing screen to show you, but I'd actually capture a screen image of the post, an image to share with my raw text, and then edit and add the link in afterwards. So you've got the visual at the same time.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That's exactly what
I don't go back and add my link, although I it's not because I don't believe Nigel, just most of the time that ship has sailed. But when I do post organically, I don't allow the preview image to show up. I will post my own image and then just the link to the post, because I don't want it just to be like, oh, she's just sharing something from her website.
Exactly,
which
Deborah.
obviously I am, but I want the focus to be on what it is, what the value proposition is to anybody who has the time to click in, and then some sort of visual to support, honestly, what I believe is a conversation I've started in that post. I am really, sticking to this, the first line of defense in your content, the first line of defense in who you are and everything that you want people to think of you and as a resource, whatever, comes in the way you share things on LinkedIn. Honestly, you can have a great share that leads to stinky content, but people will still appreciate your great share. If you have really bad shares, no one's going to ever go to your content. I mean, think about the links that you click on and why you click on them, and then apply it to yourself.
Follow-up question. Can I do a follow-up?
Yes, of course.
Okay. I feel like I'm one of the guys on the Corona webcast. When someone shares something, if they add their own bit of text above the share, rather than just sharing it, which has to me has no value. But if I share something and then type something in, hey, this guy's great, I love him, you should go to Nigel's website or whatever it is, does that have more value algorithmically than just a raw share?
Totally, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Yes, without any shadow of a doubt. So a share with no commentary, if it has no value whatsoever. So if you're going to do that at all, then the very least you could do is say, "This is why I'm sharing it."
Yeah, but as an algorithm within LinkedIn, does that work better?
Yes.
Yes. If I post something that I believe is really important for people to make note of in some way, and by the way, that doesn't have to mean I'm sending them to something I've done. I could be sending them somewhere else. I will post it, like I said, my own picture. I include the link, but I'm going to do a little test, Nigel, and see if, reposting links helps me at all. And then I will literally like my own text, like my own post, and put a comment in the first thing, the moment I post it. So LinkedIn's like, oh, there's a post. Oh, there's a comment. Let's see what that is.
Okay. The downside of that particular strategy, if I just add, is that if another comment comes in after your comment and it gets a couple of likes or comments on it, LinkedIn puts them in the order of relevance in the post. So if it's possible that your link, which is valuable, now disappears in the body of the content to beneath where the line of view, if other people are commenting a bit after it. So you'd have to find yourself reposting the content for it to stay somewhere near the top. So that's the downside of doing it the way you're doing it. But you could do both.
Who, me?
Sorry.
Who's doing it? I think I've lost the plot a bit.
Yeah. No. So if you post something.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying if you post a link in the first comment, it's going to move
That's
down.
Right.
I hear you.
Right.
But I'm just talking about, I've posted something. My link is in the text box.
Oh, okay.
I will like my own post, and then in the first comment, I might add another value proposition, or I'll tag 5 people and say, I think you guys will find this really interesting. Yeah, I don't care if that moves down. I'm just trying to jumpstart the post within my network too.
I get that. I don't do it because to me it feels like I'm gaming the system to get attraction.
Yeah.
But again, our goals are different, and I get that completely. I want to be seen to be working within the rules and having credibility to get to the end goal, as opposed to just because I'm clever than everybody else.
But I'm just saying, a word like credibility gets me crazy again, because just because I put a comment in there doesn't mean I'm not credible.
No, that's true.
I'm trying to get my post out to 30,000 people in my network. So I feel I've got to give myself every advantage for that comment, that content to reach. And by the way, that means I engage or try to engage with every single person who's commented on my post as well.
Yeah, you see, how far do you take it though? Because I imagine it's not the first time I've contemplated this. You could tag every picture you ever post with you on it. Whether you're in the picture,
I don't do anything like that.
You could tag yourself in every post in the body text.
Okay, but I don't do that either, because that becomes spammy. I'm just saying that.
Well, we're just drawing the line at different places.
Okay, so Nigel said I'm a spammer, everybody. So who's not getting the recording of this?
Hey, are we planning round 2?
Yeah, now we're going to plan round two. How can you determine when your audience is the most active, and what are the best methods to boost company page followers? That's a good one. Can I just take the first part? Corona has changed everything. Ken, you're not on microphone. Can you just type where you are in the world in the chat box?
Hi, everyone. I'm in Chicago, actually.
Hi there.
Thanks for doing this, Nigel. Thanks for doing this, Deborah.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it. I'll go on mute now.
For me, it used to be 11:30 a.m. Eastern time and 7 p.m. Eastern time were happy hour on LinkedIn, especially that 7 o'clock hour. If you think about it, people were coming home from work, or they had just finished eating dinner and they, was scrolling through their thing, or maybe they were going to look at it at night before they went to sleep. Either way, those posts at 7 o'clock were hitting. Now with Corona, oh my God, LinkedIn is dead after 4 o'clock sometimes. Friday, forget it. People have decided it's casual Corona Fridays, and they're not even showing up on LinkedIn to go to work anymore, even if they could wear sweatpants or whatever they're doing. So it honestly has completely changed. I keep mentioning the East Coast of the United States because 80% of the population of America lives in the East Coast. So that's kind of where I focus my attention to. We're talking about maximizing results. But there's something I really want the California people to know, then I'll post when I believe it's their prime time then. But it is, Ken, I have personally found now that if there's something really important you want America to see, it's got to go out before noon, or it's not going to be looked at during Corona. So, after Corona, after work.
No, Deborah, that's very interesting. I guess from the intuition side, maybe for Nigel, do you use the platform Shield? The platform, I think it's out of Norway. I don't think it's a third-party plugin. And if you use Shield, how do you use Shield to determine when your audience is most active? I agree with everything Deborah said from the intuition, and the stuff you just said about the East Coast just blew my mind. But how do I put a number to my audience's activity, and can you use Shield for that? I guess that's more of a pointed question.
Yeah, I do have Shield. I have to admit, I don't use it as in-depth as I might. And I certainly don't use it to the extent that I understand from it audience attraction in time-related fields. So I perhaps should look at that more. I use Shield mainly to just understand the audience engagement stats. Whether my content is reaching kind of the engagement levels I'd hope it reaches. That's really my biggest feature from Shield. So that answers that question. In terms of my take from a European or UK based perspective, Deborah's absolutely right. There's a Friday thing. Fridays just bomb out on LinkedIn. Don't post anything on a Friday. I mean, Fridays were always a little bit strange. They could either be the moment on a Friday afternoon in the UK when people have more time to relax and go onto LinkedIn to play around for the last couple of hours before they go home. There's that kind of angle to it. But generally, Fridays is not a good day to post. So in the UK, pre-Corona period, I would have said, if you really want a post to be successful, then post it at 7:30 in the morning on a Tuesday or a Thursday, getting the commuter traffic.
UK time? UK time, 7:30.
Yeah. But do you know what? Against that, many people are time poor, and therefore, if I was to say to an audience such as this, look, post at 7:30 on Tuesday morning, and then they get to Wednesday afternoon and they've not posted on Tuesday. Oh, I better wait till next Tuesday to post. No, post. Please don't stop posting and being active because I told you there's an optimum time to post. Just do it. Just doing it is better than not doing it and waiting for time at the best time to do it. And ultimately, different audiences have got different categories of time that they're invested in things. So, what I can say for a UK, social media marketing audience is one. But I've had some brilliant conversations with chief executives at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. I posted an article at 2:00 on a Sunday afternoon because I'm just fed up of trying to spend time doing it. And on Sunday night, I'm guessing some guys come up to his, he's sitting down watching Paul Dark, bored to tears, picks up his mobile phone, thinks, what am I doing next week? Checks out on LinkedIn. Oh, there's an interesting article. Honestly, I've been having like conversations with people at 10:30 on a Sunday night that I couldn't have ever got to that person at 9:00 on a Monday morning. So we just never know. We just never know.
Yeah. I agree. Prior to Corona, Sunday night was also another happy hour of, just think about it. Everyone's like, oh, freaking hell, I got to go to work tomorrow. Let me see what's going on. Let me check my email so I don't walk into a nightmare. And then all of a sudden they go down the rabbit hole of, all right, let me check my social media now. And yeah, you can get a lot of, I do get traffic Sunday nights as well, but not anymore, not on the weekends now. Nobody, I mean, they're like, why do I have to go on a computer on the weekend? And you missing out on that commuter time is a big deal. That's why I avoid the 7:00 hour now. People are home. They're not commuting from their, they're not commuting from their kitchen table. Sebastian had Ken had another question about boosting company page followers. Honestly, the only way I know of doing that is to get all the employees to share it too, and then have everybody go back to that content and hope that somebody wants to hear what your company has to say.
Can I just stop let me stop that train of thought.
But only if Ken braces himself just brace yourself for this, because
brace yourself, Ken. Expecting any advantage through communicating via your company page is an utter waste of time. Bottom line, end of story. Honestly, you go to view any company page on LinkedIn of any organization and there's no engagement with their posts. That nobody likes them, nobody's commenting on them. The company page manager doesn't even know who the audience is. They don't know who the followers are. And guess what? Company page content is never pushed out on a home page feed on LinkedIn much anyway. Why? Because LinkedIn want to charge you companies for the benefit of posting the content on LinkedIn platform. So why would they
Nigel and Deborah, may I chime in on this before
Please.
Deborah just crushes Nigel on this? I agree with Nigel, and I view the company page as more of a source of curation of very pro-company content.
Yes.
And if you're in a situation where unfortunately we're not right now, many countries, industries, you're in a recruiting campaign, prospective candidates will look at Glassdoor and or LinkedIn, your company page. So I view the company page as more of a curation standpoint instead of a distributor of content. Would you agree with that, Nigel?
Totally.
I agree with it. I agree with it too, by the way.
Okay.
But if you are recruiting people, you do want that company culture. You do want the things that the company cares about beyond just this is what we do. It can't be all of that. I mean, a lot of the shares could be about your customers or your community, or how people are giving back. That's obviously related to your company. But you're right. I use company pages to see who else might be on LinkedIn that it also works for that company that I'm not connected to. I certainly go there sometimes when there is no visible way for me to get to a website from somebody's personal profile if I'm not connected to them, or I can't find sometimes they make up names of their companies that don't really exist. But you're right. You have to be a brand. You have to be something that somebody wants, that feels the connection to the thing, the corporation is the value. And I always bring up like the big organizations. If you look at Adobe, if you look at the big design organizations, they're posting things about how to create a font, a typeface. So that is going to be something that's going to be interesting to all the designers out there. So they will connect with those companies, as opposed to trying to find the 3 people at Adobe or the 3 designers that are talking about typography. So there is value in the bigger sense, but anybody thinks that somebody's going to want to connect with a company that makes sticky notes, it's probably not going to happen unless you make those posts so hysterical, so engaging that the sticky notes are actually people and they, oh, this is a good idea. And they like have adventures. Then I'm going to want to connect to that page because that's where I'm going to find something interesting, but it's a double-edged sword for sure.
I'll just add just one perspective on this for those.
Ken's got to go. Stop talking.
To move it forward. Why not turn all your employees into ambassadors of your brand?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But your employees become, they become the cultural ambassadors of the ethical values of the organization and, and all the good things. So you've got multiple people with multiple networks. Whereas if you limit that to the company, and you're right, the big companies do it well. But when I mean big, you're talking about the Agfas, the Apples, the IBMs. You'd expect those guys to do it right. It's a drop in the ocean for them to do it right. But anything below the big company levels of that size, honestly, I think it's a failed strategy.
I agree, but that doesn't mean to dismiss or not create a company page.
No, absolutely not. No,
and to make sure that that company page is a complete reflection of what you want people to know about your company. So it just can't be abandoned. A lot of times you see like this, it looks like a document. It's just a gray square with a house on it because someone has said, I work at this company, but hasn't taken the time to create a company. Which is a problem because then I'm starting to think, well, is it a real company? How could they not invest in the most important thing about the company is that we're here?
They absolutely have to have a company page representing them, even if they're a one-man band. They very much need to identify a company on LinkedIn for exactly that reason, to make it look legitimate.
Okay, well, unless anyone has any other questions, we've actually done a second webinar answering questions, which is kind of cool. I'm glad everybody, I can't thank you enough for staying an extra 40 minutes. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. I'm going to say I hope you got some value out of it, but it's indicative of everybody staying here as long as they did that you did. If you obviously you can connect with either Nigel or I on LinkedIn. Nigel Cliff, CLIFFE, and I'm Deborah Korn, like the vegetable. And we can take it from there. Make sure you check out your SSI score, and if you want to get any advice on how to improve it, contact Nigel. This is what he does for a living. He does it well, and he actually guarantees results. So that I would hold him to the fire on that one.
Please do. I've been
trying to help get him to guarantee me a 79 or an 80, but I'm still hovering on 76, Nigel. So you'd have to work harder on me. And unless anyone has anything else to say, Sebastian, I see you just unmuted yourself. Did you want to say anything?
I wanted to remind you that I asked a question about when LinkedIn is pushing out content, but if we don't have time, we can take it another time.
No, we can. We want to answer your question. So, Sebastian, it was basically about if somebody posts something on LinkedIn, it might not necessarily show up on your feed. Sebastian is saying like right then and there, but sometimes later. Is that just a matter of when I'm turning on my computer to look at it? Or Sebastian, you want to clarify your question if I didn't ask it correctly?
No, I think it basically nailed it. The problem is, or the interesting thing is, we posted some content from our company page, from our personal pages, and we got some reports from colleagues or contacts that the content didn't really show up until days later sometimes, and that kind of bugs us.
Yeah, Sebastian, I might be able to help on this one. It's sometimes the case that a post will have an early amount of interaction, be it large or small. And then for whatever reason, a person with a greater influence happens to pop by on that post at a point in time and possibly comments on it. And the power of that person's influence almost reopens the power of that piece of content. So that's sometimes happened to me, thinking, what, this was dead 2 weeks ago and suddenly it's come back to life. And when I've analysed the reason for that, it's been that I've seen that somebody has either liked or interacted with it that has, you know, kind of a body of influence, and therefore it's opened up again, because the fact that they've liked or shared or commented on it has kind of put it into their post and sent that onto their connections in a way that's been meaningful, and it's kind of had a second wind.
So basically, the first time around, the post wasn't important enough to be showed in the contacts timeline, but because it got some additional value or additional scoring through another comment, like, or something, it got bumped up again to the same persons that didn't see it before.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks so much, everybody. And I will be sending this replay out into the world as well. If you want the slide deck, just, you know, reach out to Nigel, and I'm sure he can get that to anybody, or me too, but, you know, he's more personable, I think, and he's got a much better accent. So thank you again so much, and go out there and create a network.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a great show. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.